Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tvaya Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhur Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Okay, okay, let's start then. Um, Okay, so today's topic is going to be being a better friend to our mind in the age of AI. Insights from senior monks of Bellarmont. So, why I wanted to do this is because I sometimes see that we have like a lot of emphasis on different types of theories, Vedanta, Tantra, so many different types of theories. But these are all nice and good, but when we read the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, what we find is that Swamiji gave a great deal of emphasis to theory, of course, but also to practical Vedanta. And that means how to manifest this. These things should become manifest in our life. So it it's good to listen to, and the old Vedantic system was Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So to listen to text again and again, contemplate upon them, and then slowly, by osmosis, your mind gets changed or transformed. But that wasn't an age, you can say a Vedic age, where things were very pure. Now we're all so busy, we don't really get the time for that deep type of Shravana and Manana. And as a result, what sometimes happens is that we get these really nice theories, and intellectually it stimulates us. But what we find sometimes is that it doesn't really make much of a change. The same patterns of the mind, the same loops of the mind. In fact, Swami Vivekananda used to talk about this. You can have the blessings of 330 million gods of Hinduism. But what did he say? If we don't have the blessing of our own mind, everything comes to naught. So the idea is how to how do we take these Vedantic concepts and make them real in our own lives. So we're going to talk about today is the topic is being a better friend to our mind in the age of AI. This is a real now, in fact, we'll talk about it. There's lots of evidence that shows that this depression, especially among youth and teens, is as high as it's ever been, is higher than it's ever been. And even amongst the general population, uh, they talk about how cognitively we're getting affected by the overwhelming amount of information that we're receiving through the internet. So now the first question is, why does it matter if we are a good or bad friend to our own mind? Why does that matter? Does it matter at all? So in the Gita, sixth chapter, fifth verse, it says, Uduret atmanatmanam, natmanam avasadayet, atmaiva yatmano bandhuhu, atmaiva vibhuratmanaha. So let a person lift himself by his own mind, and let him not sink himself by depression. Atma eva hi atmana bandhuhu. For the self alone the self alone is the friend of oneself. And the self alone is the enemy of oneself. Now, this concept of Atma, in parts of the Gita, it means mind as well. In other places, it means soul, but it also means mind. So, so this is kind of important. Let a person lift himself by his own mind alone, and let him not lower himself. Okay. Now, The research model, again, I'd suggest if anyone's watching, if any of you can, it's
Morning.
okay. So
So
in this
in
matter,
this
what sh- I can hear an echo right there. Someone has
someone
the, I can hear my own voice echoing. Sailesh, are you there? Okay. So the research model suggests that the cognitive model of depression indicates that negative thoughts can both cause and sustain depressive states. Furthermore, depression itself makes more negative cognitions more accessible, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that perpetuates and deepens the condition. Let me step back a little bit. Shankaracharya in the Gita mentions this, that uh, the word ahara, who here knows what the word ahara means? Okay. The word ahara means, normally it means food in Sanskrit, but Shankaracharya in the Gita says it not only means food, but it means whatever we intake, whatever we imbibe. That's also another meaning of ahara. What is the relevance of that in this day and age today? We're always carrying a mobile phone. And if you look at the headlines of the internet, of the mobile phone, of social media, YouTube, is it generally positive or negative? Who could say? Negative. What research, there's a researcher, neurologist named John Teasdale. So he did this research. In it, he gave some prompts that would put people in a depressed state. In that state, he asked them to recall something positive. His research showed that when a person is in a depressed state, they are less likely to be able to recall pleasant memories or even make pleasant interpretations of past memories. Normally, we say a happy person, usually they're filled with happy thoughts. When they go back to the past, they're thinking of the positive things in their life. But what we find here is that when the mind gets depressed, it has difficulty pulling up pleasant memories, positive thoughts. Now, the second part of it, John Teasdale's research shows when a person is then constantly receiving negative thinking, that puts them in a depressed state. And when they're in a depressed state, they have difficulty recalling positive thoughts. I and let's make this a little bit more interactive. And those who are watching, Chetan, if some of you can just show your face, it's better than it. I prefer something more interactive than just a lecture. So any of you can, that'll be great if you can show yourselves. Anyways, continuing. Um, thank you, thank you. Uh, Otherwise, when you if the speaker doesn't get enthusiasm unless you see
Swamiji, can you
faces.
see us?
Who can see who's speaking?
This is Shailesh.
No, I can't see you either. No, Shailesh, cannot see
No, I
you.
mean, you can see some devotees here, right? We,
Yeah, I
we are
can see.
spread out
Yeah,
in the room.
no,
We are
you
spread
could
out in the
also.
shrine.
Well, you can just sit in the center. Then that's better. Then that's always better. Then you can. That's
I
better for
haven't
the
turned the
speaker.
lights on. Let me turn the light on.
Yeah, you could turn the lights on too, and you can all sit in the center. So that's kind of good. Uh, Otherwise, uh, Swami
Oh,
Vivekananda said that about the like you're speaking to
come sit here.
yeah. You can
Yeah,
just sit in the
very
center,
good.
like the centers. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's better then. So then that's easier to see. So otherwise, Swamiji said that you're speaking to a voice without a form. So that's not, we're not so advanced in that way. So does everyone follow what I said about the internet? So normally the internet, it contains negative content. And if we repeatedly watch it, according to this research of John Teasdale, we get into a depressed state. How many of you find that to be true? In fact, there's one concept in the internet. In during my time in Harvard, I took a course on this, and there's one concept called doom scrolling. How many of you here know what doom scrolling is? Doom scroll. Okay, what is it? Okay, good. Doom scrolling is when you just start to veg in front of the internet, YouTube, social media. You just start looking at things, and mainly the things you look at are probably 90 to 95% negative content. They found evidence that this not only affects the mind, it affects the mind how? It makes a person depressed, makes them more passive. It can make them triggered, angry.
I think Swamiji, that is
Yeah,
even true of watching movies. Many of the movies, kind of kindle even if I am in a good state, it makes you either sad or angry or something, So not only in news, even, many movies we watch or serials, they tend to do the similar kind of, change our balance of mind. So you're
yes.
absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, so this is what Shankaracharya said this in the Gita. Ahara means what we imbibe through our senses, through our five senses. Information today is what we're imbibing.
Mm.
And I think I mentioned this in an earlier class. How many of you have heard of the cognitive negative bias theory? Okay, one. Okay, good. Two. Okay. So
CBT,
what that
right?
base negative cognitive bias, I'm not sure the acronym. It could be. And basically it is that we're more prone to negativity than positivity. Holy Mother said this. I was talking to one monk today. Holy Mother said the nature of the mind is the flow downward. What did she mean by downward? We think that it means, okay, flowing towards the senses. That's one interpretation, flowing towards the world and not towards God. But I would argue another interpretation would definitely be the mind's bias towards negativity. In fact, Holy Mother, you know what one of her prayers was? She looked at the moon and saw a that the moon had some what is it? Some stains to it. And she said, even the moon has stains, but she prayed to the divine, let my mind be pure. And she prayed, the Holy Mother herself prayed to give up fault finding. So fault finding too, taking in negative things, fault finding, that also puts the mind in a downward spiral, which leads to depression, which leads to a negative state. Now, going back to the internet, it's saying I read another article, how the internet hijacks our mind. Now, one theory is if you control the menu, you control the choices. What do I mean by that? Um, well, okay, Western culture, when we're talking about the West, we all live in the West, is normally built around the ideals of individual choice and freedom. Millions of us fiercely defend our right to make free choices, but we ignore how those choices are manipulated upstream by menus we did not choose in the first place. So one author mentions this. This is exactly what magicians do. They give people the illusion of free choice while architecting the menu so that they win no matter what you choose. So, for example, he gives an example. When people are given a menu of choices, they rarely ask, what is not on the menu? When you go to your YouTube feed or your social media page, or your YouTube feed, you see the videos that are present. Do you ever ask what's not being given to me?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect example.
Another thing is, why am I being given these options and not others? Another one, do I know the menu provider's goals? Who's giving me these choices? What is their intention and motivation? They're giving me these things based on algorithms, but what is their intention? Fourth, is this menu empowering my original needs? Why I'm watching the internet in the first place? Or are they just choices? Are these choices actually just a distraction? A distraction. And then he gives a nice example. For example, imagine you are out with your friends on a Tuesday night and you're at a restaurant and you want to keep the conversation going. maybe the restaurant's going to close. You open Yelp to find nearby recommendations and see a list of bars. The group turns into a huddle of faces staring down at their phones, comparing bars. They scrutinize the photos of each, comparing cocktail drinks. Now, is this menu that they're looking at, is this still relevant to the original desire of the group? What was the original desire of the group? To keep the conversation going. But now their mind is focused on what type of cocktail they want at the local bar. It's not, he continues, it's not that bars are not a good choice. It's that Yelp substituted the group's original question, where can we go to keep this conversation, to keep talking, with a different question. What's a bar with good photos of cocktails? All by shaping the menu. Moreover, the group falls for the illusion that Yelp's menus represent a complete set of choices for where to go. While looking down at their phones, they don't see the park right across the street with a band playing live music. They miss the pop-up gallery on the other side of the street, serving crepes and coffee. Neither of these show up on Yelp's. How the menu shapes our choices and manipulates us. Neither of those show up. In fact, it says, in other ways they do this. When we think of who's free to hang out, we sometimes think, okay, who we want to go hang out to, who's free to hang out. It becomes a menu of most recent people who texted us, who recently texted us on our phone. If we think about what's happening in the world, it becomes a menu of news feed stories that we open up. And if we think I have to respond to this email, it becomes a menu of keys to type a response instead of thinking of different empowering ways to communicate with a person. You see how our choices are getting limited by social media, by the age of AI.
Swamiji, the one thing that also happens with all the constant newsfeed,
Yeah.
whether it's internet or whether it's just messages that we get or WhatsApp messages, all of that, is that we become totally desensitized. Like right now,
Yes.
like yesterday, I was talking to my brother who lives in India, and we were talking about the India-Pakistan war. And the way he responded was a lot different than the way I responded. It was like, I was like, oh my God, this happened. I think they are like constantly bombarded with all this India-Pakistan news. I felt like he was a little bit like more desensitized by what was happening at the border. Whereas I was exposed to so much news that I was just in my imagination, I was building up. Whereas in his case, like he's bombarded with all this news. So the desensitization happens as well. The empathy and all of that is somewhere gets lost.
Yes. And actually, I wrote an article. I think I gave it Can God Vision and Television Go Together? And there we talked about, and anyways, that's a good point. There I talked about this. They've done studies on this, that as you spend more time on the internet, your faculties of thinking, feeling, and willing decline because you're engaging in a virtual world. So what they've done studies, they've done scans of people who spend many hours on the internet. And I termed a new coin in this article. We call it the virtual transfer. Virtual transfer. So what happens then is, if you're always like in a state of scatteredness, of superficiality in your thinking, feeling, and willing qualities, and this is what happens on the internet for the most part. What's going to happen then when you go back to the real world, after some time, those faculties get compromised. So, and when we wake up in the morning and turn our phone on, sometimes rather than doing japam at this time, what do? We turn our phone on to see a list of notifications. The list of notification frames the experience of quote unquote waking up in the morning. Is that clear? Earlier times, they think, okay, let me look at the picture of Thakur, let me meditate, let me repeat my mantra. Now what's happening? First thing, many people, they first open the phone, list of notifications. This frames the entire day. In fact, Ramakrishna taught, just a quick side note, Ramakrishna talked about this idea. One time he woke up and he Before he could look, Ramakrishna had this habit in Dakshineshwar. When he would wake up, he would immediately look at the face of God and say Om Tat Sat and say the Divine Mother's name. One day, what happened is before he could look at the face of God, somebody else came in the room, and some person, and that just he thought that was like a bad omen. When we first wake up, we should look at God, not look at it. That shapes and shapes our day in many ways we don't even realize. The eyes, especially the ears. The ears really shape the Shabda Brahman we talk about. So the ears also, what we first listen to in the morning time, let it be something good, let it be something auspicious. Mantra. That's why they say repeating the mantra again and again. So this is one way that the internet hijacks us. It shapes our menus. Another way they talk about is slot machines in our pockets. So they've now created these internet on the mobile phone apps that mimic slot machines to keep us hooked. Every time we check our phones, refresh email, scroll Instagram, or swipe on dating apps, we're pulling a lever for a variable reward. With phones checked, they've said now we checked our phones at least 150 times a day. Our attention is, they call, gamified, keeping us addicted through unpredictability as well as instant gratification. Number three, another way that the phone causes us distraction. They've created in us a fear of missing something important. Even if there's a 1% chance of missing out, it keeps us glued. Notifications, alerts, play on our anxiety that something critical might escape our attention, pushing us to constantly check in. More than that, it becomes a habit then. It doesn't take long for us to form a habit. So now we're almost all in the habit of checking our phones. It just becomes a habit now. You just pick it up and check. Fourth way it hijacks us. Social approval, likes, shares, and comments tap into our deep desire for validation. Social media platforms exploit this need, keeping us engaged by making our self-worth tied to digital feedback. Self-worth tied to digital feedback. How many likes we get, how many views we get. This plays, suddenly our self-worth, our valuation today is based on that. Fifth way it hijacks us, social reciprocity. Social norms are digitized. If someone texts us, follows or thanks us, we feel compelled to respond in kind. How many of you feel like this? How many of that if someone says to types you something on WhatsApp, you may not feel like, or email, you may not feel like responding, but you feel that you have to respond. How many of you feel like that sometimes? Yeah.
It goes away with training though.
It goes away with training. Okay. Well, then that's sure. Anything goes away with training. But what we're talking about right now is the unconscious patterns that for many people it's affecting us in many ways.
Maharaj, can I interrupt you?
Sure.
I want to play a devil's advocate here.
Sure.
And I want to say that in 1950, I was sitting on a farm milking a cow, and then I was reading a newspaper or a radio, listening to a radio, and then doing about my work. And now it's different, but still I was a bad person. There were killing going on, there were rapes, and there were wars. People were bombing each other. And if you see the number of saints or the spiritual people was almost equal as it is today. So what does it matter? If it's, if even if the internet is polluting our mind, it's okay. What do you think about that?
Right. Well, that's a very good counterpoint. So that's looking at like see the Prakriti Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvashaha. The Prakriti is gonna play. We're not saying that the world's gotten better or worse. In fact, there's statistics that the world may be better now than it was in the 1950s. That's not the point. What we're talking about is our individual habits. And we're talking about as spiritual aspirants. So the three faculties that are very, very important to cultivate in trying to make progress in our spiritual life are these faculties. Thinking, that replaced the Jnana Yoga. Feeling, that's Bhakti Yoga. Willing, this again is Raja Yoga, meditation. So these three faculties, what it is showing is that in comparison to previous times, the mind is now becoming what we talked about in Yoga Sutras, vikshipta, kshipta, distracted, always in a constant state of distraction. So this it does have consequences. It's showing that people are now more depressed, teenagers especially. Suicide rate is up, depression is up by 50 to 70%. This is what the studies are showing. And young people now are always in a constant state of angst. So we can, it's hard to say in the 1950s, 1960s what it was like, but probably they're saying it's become much worse. So how technology is affecting us as psychologically, mental health care, and also spiritual aspirants. So let me put this, so Shailais, like when we study the Yoga
Thank you.
Sutras, yeah, so that's a good question. So thank you for raising that. So now we get to the mind and its traditional monastic understanding. So, and this is the second part of the talk today. I wanted to talk about my observations of senior monks that I've seen that are from that earlier generation. I interviewed quite a few of them, at least three of them. One is our president of our order, Swami Gautamananji. Another is a vice president, Swami Suhitanandaji. And another is Swami Dipyananji, another vice president of our order. And I was just trying to see that they were quite, what I saw in these three monks, and I feel that people can get lots of inspiration from them, that yes, they represent an earlier generation. But what I found in them is that compared to even teenagers today, their mind is much more fresh. They're positive thinking. They're kind, gentle, and always empathetic towards others. And always a growth mindset, always seeking knowledge. And Swami, the president of our order is now, he's 96 years old. He just turned 96 years old a few weeks ago. And Suhitanji is 90 years old. And Divyananda is 70 years old. So what is it that we can learn from them? What is it that youth can learn from them today? What is it that we're missing? So the topic was, going back, the topic was being a better friend to our mind in the age of AI, insights from senior monks of Bellarmine. So the first part of this talk, we talked about how the mind is getting distracted. Now let's see what these insights that these three monks have talked about. So I'll just mention that, yes, all three of them, I found in all three of them, there's gentleness, awareness, and patience. And rather than talking about them individually, I'm close with all three of them. I just want to talk about some common traits I saw in all of them. One is positivity. All three of them are inherently positive. Swami Dibyanandaji, he's just became president of our order. He used to go into the jails in Malda and transform the worst prisoners there. Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Christians, Sikhs. He would go to the jail and literally hug these people and change their lives. Such positivity. I never found any of them engaging in gossip or indulging in mean-spirited talk. Their humor also was light and kind, never leaving one feeling diminished or disheartened. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't sometimes get angry. They definitely do, but it's not something that stings. Quality number two is simplicity. In Bangla, we say shorala, guilelessness. They're free from these psychological complexes that the lens of the ego, I'm superior, I'm inferior. The concept of the oppressor and the oppressed, which is now in Harvard and many academic institutions. I'm the oppressed, or I'm the oppressor. You're the oppressor, I'm the oppressed. The victim and the, what is it, the aggressor and the victim. Those binaries, they're free from those things. I saw that each of them see the world through Swamiji's vision. Each soul is potentially divine, and the task is to awaken that divinity. That's how they see the world. That's how they see, they might, especially with young people, there might be some young people that everybody writes off, but they look at them a little bit differently. They see, is there some point there? Okay, let me raise that point up. They do
Oh,
these things yeah, go ahead.
oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Yes. They do these things spontaneously. I'll give you an example of that. Swami Suhitananda, we'll get to the questions at the end. So please remember the question because I want to have an interactive discussion.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's the main point. We'll finish soon, and definitely, please please hang. So Swami Suhitanji, he was when I joined, he was in charge of our PPTC. At that time, he was an assistant general secretary. Then he became the general secretary, the executive secretary, and today he's the senior vice president. For over a decade, he would walk with young monks, young brahmacharis, morning and evening, an hour at a time, 2 hours a day, giving his full attention. Can you imagine giving up I can't even imagine monks today doing that. Anyone giving 2 hours of your time every day. Everybody's not that he's not so busy. Everybody's busy today, but giving 2 hours of your day every day and just listening to a young novice just speak and just listening very intently. Why? So they're seeing that potential spark of divinity and how to awaken that. I mentioned Dibyanji. Another thing is this, yeah, we talked about this non-critical nature, never engaging in Bangla, we say paraninda. In fact, that's a vow we take in our brahmacharya mantras, not to engage in the criticism of others. Okay, who can say why? I mentioned this in the beginning. What does criticizing others, what does that do to us? I mentioned this in the beginning. What are the two things it does?
We are when we look at other people's negative qualities, or when we are criticizing them, I think two things happen. We imbibe some of those things, and then we also fail to see the divinity in them because we are like so busy criticizing them that we have failed to see the divinity in them.
That's true. That's true from a Vedanta perspective. But what we mentioned in the beginning, that when you get, okay, I'll get back to you. But when we do that, we also don't. It causes depression. What we mentioned this, you were not there at the beginning. We talked about the study done by Jeff Teagle, and he mentioned that when we get negativity, when we receive negative content, that puts us in a depressed state. And when we're in a depressed state, we're unable to then find the positivity within ourselves. So what it's doing is making us depressed. What you said is true. We're looking at the negative, that's arising those vrittis within us. It's making us depressed and negative. But please, you had a question? Or a
No,
comment?
well, I had an answer to your question. What do
Sure,
we do
sure.
when we criticize others? Well, it makes me feel superior. I'm better than them, so I can put them down. And I think about this a lot. That's such a deep instinct to establish ourselves in a hierarchy. It goes, most animals that live in packs do that. There's the top dog and then the second dog and so on. So that's like a deep instinct within me that I have to constantly look for. And when I'm criticizing others, it's often motivated by that.
Yeah, and that initially, not only you, all of us do that, but you know what it eventually does? It starts off as kind of like a pleasure in ourselves that we're feeling superior, but what neuroscience has found out and psychology is now talks about, there's a fine line between an superiority complex and an inferiority complex. It's like reverse and obverse of the same coin. So that ultimately has the effect of actually bringing our mind down. Okay, the fourth characteristic.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You go ahead.
Okay. The fourth characteristic is that and we'll get back to comments at the end as well. But the fourth characteristics we see is the integrity, that in each of these three monks I mentioned, there was an integrity. So they were less prone to politics, and there was an integrity. In Bengali, we say mon mukh ek koro. So let the mind and the speech be one. And it's not that all of us are prone to that, that when people are criticizing somebody, it's easy for us to jump into that as well. But those noble souls, those really elevated souls, uh, they're able to, in that time when there's a mob of people attacking, you'll find usually one person there that stands up and says, finds the good in them. I've seen that with Swami Ranganathananji. Um, he was one of the past presidents of our order, and another monk once went to him and he read a book, and Raghunatha asked this monk, "What did you find about the book?" So the monk kept talking about all the negative things about the book, what the author didn't do. And Raghunathanji just waited and said, "Did you find anything good? Anything else?" The monk then mentioned one good point he found. Then Raghunathanji was happy. Yes, thank you. So that's a rare blessing. This is what Holy Mother prayed for. It's so hard to cultivate that. It's very, very difficult. In fact, I won't say it's more difficult than God realization, but we always talk about all these other things. Uh, we just had a class on Tantra, so we talk about the Kundalini awakening, all these esoteric things. But no, what Swami Vivekananda talked about was this: being more positive, transforming our own character. Another thing I saw was that this broad-mindedness, that these monks, they were not driven by strong likes and dislikes. Another thing, they had a strong digestive power for ideas, personalities, and events. They could also digest unpleasantries. Normally, like if somebody disrespects us, we have a quick trigger. We immediately, without even thinking, we hit back. But for them, these monks, I could see that they had this, in Bengali, we say Hajamer Shakti. This is a spiritual power, the power to digest unpleasantries. Where does that power come from? Like conviction, I'm this Atman, and I'm saturated with this positivity of this divinity. So I don't get affected by that. I have a longer rope. I can give other people more space. That was another thing I saw with these monks. They give you more space. What happens when somebody gives you more space? You don't feel judged. You don't feel that you have to be perfect. You don't have to please. You don't have to impress. You can be yourself and grow from there. Now, there's quality I saw in these monks. Again, I'm talking about they're 90, Swami Gautamananda, 96 years old. They're very well read and curious as well. Not well read like scholars, but they keep reading positive inspirational stories. They read the scriptures, and they're curious minds. They're always looking for ways to seek inspiration and impart that inspiration to others through positive stories. Another quality, discipline and punctuality. This is all three of them have this discipline and punctuality. So some of us, we don't have that. But they always stick to that routine, and they say that routine, rather than becoming rigid, it gives them dynamism. Is that clear? That becomes like a base for them. But within that base, they get more freedom. Um, Another quality is this universal respect. I sometimes poke some of them. Now this Hindu-Muslim conflict is going. And some of them come from parts of India where Hindus have been tortured by Muslims. But I've never heard them criticize people from other religions. So the Samandarshana, what Ramakrishna says, this divinity is everywhere. So Suhitanji talked about this. He would go into Muslim populations and he would inspire them with Vedanta. Same thing with Swami Divyanandaji. So this universality just automatically oozes from them. Another thing is that their deep concentration, whatever they do, they're deeply absorbed in it. They don't waste a single moment. And like Suhitananji, he's 90 years old now. His assistant was telling me when he's reading anything, he'll be so absorbed in it, anything he's reading, that if you just go to him and touch him, he'll get startled. So that everything has a purpose. So they give deep, if somebody speaks, they give deep concentration. I think in one of my first talks in Atlanta, I talked about Carl Rogers, and he talked about liberation through empathy, the empathy of deep listening of another person and their journey is liberating for both the speaker as well as the listener. Another thing is that they don't exaggerate small things or make mountains out of molehills. They keep balance. And so many things, but I'll just say one more. They move in their own rhythm. All three of them, they don't move according to the world. They each have their own inner rhythm and inner pace, and they move according to that. Not to please others, but they move in a harmonious, punctual, but in their own pace. And yes, they're all, I was thinking about this, and we'll start the Yoga Sutras class again this Wednesday. We talked about asana. What does asana mean? Who can tell me?
Posture, where you sit.
Yes, posture. Yes. Good. Excellent, Chetanji. So posture, we talked about that in the Yoga Sutras. So all of them always keep a straight posture. Now, Swami Gautamji, they're leaning a little bit because he's 96 years old, the muscles get, but for their most life, they kept a straight posture. Secondly, there's a harmony in their breathing. When they move, there's a harmony in their breathing. What we call in the Yoga Sutras, if any of you have practiced yoga, there's this anulom vilom, different types of pranayama. Those things, the breath moves in a natural way of ease. That growth and positive mindset we talked about. They mentioned one monk Gopesh Maharaj. He was Holy Mother's disciple. At the age of 80, he decided to learn Urdu to keep the mind sharp and fresh. And finally, they're not overly concerned with public persona, public image. I can't say how they were earlier on, but maybe this is the fruit of a life well lived. But at this stage, Swami Vivekananda said in one of his lectures, normally 99% of our energy goes to trying to prove to you that I'm something that I'm not, and 1% to try to become that. But these great monks were the opposite. 99% is actually based in integrity, not trying to become something, they're not trying to project. They avoid that power of projection. What time is it right now? Okay, 9:40, 10. We'll have discussion just real quickly. So what are some practical ways we can practice some of these things? I've listed about 20 qualities. So I asked Swami Suhitananji, what are some ways? He mentioned the idea of training attention. Yes, one way is keeping attention and awareness as spiritual practice. So when we wake up in the morning, before we move, even when we're still sitting in our bed, we get up, we sit straight. A couple of breaths. Let's try that right now. Just easily breathing through the nose. And silently breathing out. I can try it. It should be silent. Breathing in through the nose. Breathing out. Let it be done in silence. If we keep practicing this, even when we're in work, we can make this habit our own. This is one thing that this idea of breath leads to thoughts. So the more we practice this ease of breath, tomorrow, this is one practice you can start tomorrow when you go to sleep, when you wake up in the morning. Try this for 1 minute. Again, just easy in. Pushing the air down, no noise. Another thing. So then she talked about journaling. Journaling is a helpful practice. But how to journal? He said something very interesting, which I'd like to raise afterwards. He said regarding journaling, when you journal, don't write down the mistakes you've made, which I found very interesting. Even Holy Mother said in her meditation at night, nighttime meditation, think over the things that you did well and the things that you did not do well, like that. There's another example of a Buddhist monk that every time his mind would get distracted, he would put like a black marble in a jar during his meditation. But Suhitananji said this, don't write down negative things. Why did he say that? I was thinking about that. I asked him why. He said, especially when you write something down, you're reinforcing it. So Ramakrishna said, he who says again and again, I'm a sinner, what happens to the person? Ami papi, ami papi. Papi hoye jabe. In Bengali, papi means sinner. You become a sinner. And who thinks that I'm divine, that person becomes divine. Now, this is not to bypass our problems. We're not saying that. All the great sadhakas and the people of realization, they had to, we're studying in Yoga Sutras, we have to know our own mind as well. But we know I have these defects. That's enough just to objectify it and not to give undue emphasis to it. So not to make it deeper, but getting the knowledge. This is my good points. This is my bad points. Yes, I made this mistake, but not dwelling in it. Is that clear? Because otherwise that could become a deep samskara in itself. And we don't do this to those of you who are parents. Don't do this to your children either. I told this to my mother. Don't keep saying don't tell your child don't do that, or you're getting, if you keep saying that you're getting angry or you're getting impatient, then that quality becomes more and more manifest. You know, another reason for people getting depressed, what we talked about in the study by John Teague in the very beginning, people have difficulty finding their own good qualities. We label it as being arrogant. So it's important to have a healthy understanding of one's own mind and also appreciate the one's good qualities as well. Another thing we could practice Holy Mother's advice on self-reflection. If you want peace, do not find fault with others. Learn to see your own faults. Learn to make the whole world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. The whole world is your own. There's one lady, she told this to at the end of her life, that this person was always fault finding. So this was something, if you want to please the Holy, she never liked fault finding. She didn't like it at all. When we do that, this is what actually Holy Mother prayed for. She prayed, let my mind be free from the tendency of fault finding. So we talked about this awareness and attention through breath, journaling. And finally, we can start with this routine. They say a little discipline goes a long way. So sometimes what happens is some of us are perfectionists. So we might feel that, okay, we missed out, so the whole day goes uh, um, is a waste. What they're finding now also is that in the current society, there's a lot of people that suffer from ADHD. Who knows what ADHD is? Attention deficit disorder. In fact, what they're finding is that attention deficit disorder is being perpetuated by the mobile phone, by technology. If people have a little, everyone has ADHD to some extent, but this mobile phone is increasing it. So Celestia, you were talking about what's the difference? This ADHD was not so prevalent before. Now you can see many, many more children are Ritalin taking medication at an early age. Even adults as well. So we can try to choose like a small habit, starting with, say, waking up in the morning time with breathing, intentionality, a little meditation. And now habits have been done. They said that it takes about 60, either some studies say it takes 21 days, and other studies say it takes 66 days to form a new habit. So this is the third thing that we can do. So one is waking up with intentionality, breathing. Second is journaling. Third is avoiding the pitfalls, trying to catch ourselves when we engage in criticism of others. And fourth is this routine, just choosing a simple habit to start with and building upon that. You know, what I saw with Swami Suhitananji, when I was in Washington, D.C., he visited me then. Uh, and I was not so consistent with my exercise. He told me one thing. He said, you go to the gym and within 1 hour you come back. So I used to go some days 2 hours, some days not at all. When you confine, when you respect time, that actually gives power to the activity and a consistency as well. No matter what, I'm going to do this at this time. I'm going to finish by this time, no matter what. And it's better to start this with smaller units, not large units, small chunks, even 10 minutes to begin with. The idea of consistency, keeping the habit up. Another practice is learning to cultivate friendship with the mind. So when we're doing journaling, write something good that you've done for the day, especially if the mind is prone towards criticism of oneself. There'll be some that actually, this is two types of mind. One type of mind is more narcissistic in nature. It thinks more about what I've done, what I've accomplished. And many great people have that narcissistic tendency to, I've done this, I've done that. The other is nature is pessimistic towards one's own nature. That leads towards depression. Both, if extremes, taken to extremes, are classified as psychological disorders. So we have to be aware of what our tendencies are. If we're more hard towards ourselves, it's important then, especially this journaling, what do I want? What I've done something good to the day. Emphasizing that. What we talked about in the beginning, Swami Vivekananda said that being a friend to our own mind, being a better friend to our own mind. So this is also another way. What I've done good to the day. Objectively, what have I done? Something good I've done today. What's the purpose of that? That's giving emphasis. That's cultivating a deep samskara, making that tendency stronger. We want to weaken the bad tendencies and strengthen the good tendencies. Okay. Okay. So we've talked about these 6 practices today, and today we've talked about the, I'll just review what we've talked about, that neurological evidence shows how internet leads to depression, and depression leads to people having difficulty retrieving positive thoughts. And secondly, we talked about the 6 ways that the mind gets hijacked by the internet. Third thing we talked about was the insights from 3 monks, Suhitananji, Dibyananji, and our President Maharaj. All 3 of them are almost, one is 96 years old, the other is 90, the other is 70, above 70. And the positive traits that they embodied, including especially positivity. And finally, we talked about 4 different practices that we can try to cultivate so that we can also be a better friend to our own mind in the age of AI. So with that, now we can some discussion or any questions anybody had or any just comments. I'm actually more interested in than questions, just discussion. So
If anybody has
please.
anything to say, please come here.
Swamiji, I have a comment and a question.
Sure.
Okay. So the comment that I have is, Chetan and I, we attended a Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist mindfulness meditation group. Like this was like during COVID time. And one of the things that they said, which was really helpful, was that like a lot of mindful, and this was done by Emory University because they had a lot of incidents of suicide among the student groups. So this was started for the students, but then they opened it up for the others as well. So one thing that they talked about was that the first thing you need to do is, the first person you have to forgive is yourself. And that is the hardest thing, that because most people, we find like we go into all this spiraling depression because we are always like, why did I do this? Why did I do this? And beat ourselves up. So she said, one thing you can do is think of one person that you love, like your mother, maybe, like, or your father, someone who would forgive you. So think of that person and they will say, okay, I made all these mistakes, fine. What would my mother say? Will she forgive me? And when you have that, I think that would be easier for you to forgive yourself. So that was one strategy that.
So think of somebody that you love.
Think of
would they
somebody
forgive
that
you?
you love and
Okay.
who would be willing to forgive you, and then use that person as your role model to forgive yourself, like how they would forgive you. So use that to forgive yourself. So it would be
Okay.
easier. It would be easier to transfer. Like my mom would forgive me. So
Yeah.
I think, and she's going to like shower love on me regardless. So I think, okay, I made the mistake. Fine, let me move on. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's an interesting point. I find sometimes with I find this with my parents actually, that I was sometimes tell them this, that uh why do you keep looking at my faults? I asked them something. They said that they said that you're not a parent, so you don't understand that when a parent, that they can't stand to see even like the slightest defect in their child. So they said you don't understand this. You'll never you're not a parent, so you won't understand this. So I thought that was interesting too, that they might
But
forgive.
But
Yeah.
Swamiji, you are a younger person. So, and parents, we still find fault with our, like I find fault with my kids too. But then as
Yeah.
you get age and your parents age, then
Yeah.
I think the attitude changes as well, because the
I
parents,
don't know.
okay, they did okay.
I don't know, they're 88. So I don't know. I don't know when I was wondering when that's going to change.
And then the comment that I have is, like you talked about the three senior monks, the
Yeah.
President Maharaj, as well as the two assistant
Right.
assistant presidents. And the comment that I have is that I think spirituality helps us develop positivity. Age is a factor, but not all old people are positive, because like I can use my parents as an example. I mean, of course, they are no longer living. My mom was one of the most positive person I have ever known. She had like her life was like full of serving others and helping, and like joy everywhere and all the time. My dad was like, you give him like you have 3/4 glass of water, he will be like thinking, okay, why is there not that other quarter cup of water?
Sure.
So he was like, there were two opposites, and I don't know how my grandfather arranged them to be married. They got married and they lived happily so long. But regardless, I think it's not all old people are positive. I think
Sure.
spirituality makes even a young person, like I look at all of you are all such positive people, and many of you are so young. I think there's practices that you engage in, the spirituality, that you surround yourself with holy thoughts and holy books and holy company. I think that brings the positivity. The age could be a factor, but not necessarily.
No, it's not. In fact, these three monks, they were exceptional in that way, because I've seen many monks, I shouldn't say this, but I've seen many monks who are not like that. So, unfortunately, so first you have
There
to
are
get
more
bitten.
monks like that.
Some, not
Yeah,
all,
so
but
so
a
so Maharaj,
few.
I was just going to come to that point,
Sure.
is that you gave all the examples, and these are extraordinary monks, and their minds are very refined, and obviously their transmigration has purified and brought them to that point. And so, but most of us, I mean, I can speak for myself, is that, when I'm young, I am indulgent. If I seek pleasure all the time, I really don't care if I have ADHD or not. I just want to enjoy. I want to spend time. And in my mother tongue, they say "Ala divas karaitsa," which means I just want to spend the day. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
If I'm mindful about it or not. And then over the period of time, we suffer, and then we start looking at. It can be anything. The suffering can be, financial. Not much success or whatever. And then you start
Yeah.
thinking about what bad choices I did or whatever. And then
Yeah.
that evolution happens. And I think I'm at that point. But my concern is that sometimes now I'm in a role where I have to influence my kids. I have to,
Sure.
like you said, I have to knock some sense in them. But it doesn't happen. It's very difficult, very difficult. Like if they have just, like you are an exception, Maharaj. You were born and brought up here, and then,
No. No. I'll put
but it's
even
very
if.
difficult with my kids I've seen. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't want them to be like very, very learned, but just a little bit, a little bit of common sense.
yeah. Well, I think that parents can only really, uh, okay, I'll give you Ramakrishna's example. Chandramani Devi, she taught Ramakrishna. The incident where in Halda Pukur, Ramakrishna, he was a young boy, 5 years old. He used to go to the area where the women were undressing. He's a small boy. And so he was just watching them. Then they got offended. Then one lady went and told him, one elder lady, they're all old ladies, that, if you do this, a ghost is going to come and break your neck. So Thakur Ramakrishna, then he and his friends went the next 3 days secretly, and after 3 days, he said nothing happened. So you see how logical he is, Ramakrishna at the age of 5. Then what happened was then that his mother, Chandramani Devi, the way she reasoned, she said, yes, you're right. There's nothing will happen to you if you do that. But if you do that, if you watch those ladies, then they'll feel offended. If they feel offended, then I feel offended. So is it good for you to insult them as well as me? See, then Ramakrishna's mind changed. So that's where we have to be more subtle in how and I know it's hard for especially Indian parents, because it's very top. You guys are all top down, especially from India. So, but that's where to engage in that type of that type of reasoning with the children. That works more effective.
Very good point, Margaret. I think we have to be sensible and mindful how to interact with the kids. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I've seen, that only that works.
yeah.
And whatever it is, if it whatever happens, happens. Whatever understanding they get, they get.
Yeah, we can't, because they're different people too. They're different souls. So all we can do,
Yeah,
and I
exactly.
think it really has to come from inside out. Not
Yeah.
I show them, but my life will be more, that'll plant a deeper seed in them than anything I say. You know that saying that what you are is so loud that I cannot hear what you are saying. Remember that quote by, I forgot who said it.
So,
Yeah.
Swamiji,
To say,
I,
can come here.
I had a thought to share with you.
Sure.
Balaji, you are quiet today.
When we were in Ayodhya, you called us and talked to us in our recent trip.
I'm sorry, oh, I'm sorry, someone,
Okay. No,
just
I
one
was
second.
yeah.
Oh, just one second. Before we'll get
Yeah,
to that.
Balaji wants to say something.
Yeah, just
Oh,
go ahead.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaste, Balaji. Yeah,
Pranam Maharaj.
namaste.
Couple of things. I just wanted to bring, first what, Shailesh was saying. Most of the kids learn looking at what their parents are doing rather than what they're preaching.
Sure.
That is number one. Number two, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi said this, you are talking about the breathing early in the morning. Actually, he talks about both prana and mind are the two branches of the tree. So when you do the breathing, automatically your mind calms down.
Right.
And the third thing I just wanted to bring, when you are doing the journal and all those things, sometimes you become egotistic when you are doing all the good things and all those things. But that is why the practice should be, oh, today I did all these things because of the mother's blessing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. And again, remember I mentioned that there's two types. There's the pessimistic and the optimistic. There's two types of personalities too. So some people, I think, like Balaji, you would be example of that more, and many of you are example of that. So you'll be more, you see that you'll be more doers. So you'll see the more positive aspect of yourself. So yes, then you have to offer that to the mother. And in some people, and in any of us, this can happen where it becomes pessimistic too. At that time, uh, yes, it's important to involve the divine, but also to see your own good qualities and to emphasize that. And I think that that's because you can build upon that. So children or whoever that suffers from some depression, that's one of the problems, that they fall into an abyss and they cannot see their good qualities. Those have to be brought out. So I think that's something that parents can do as well. Emphasize the good thing that they've done in addition to the things not to do, but give equal or more emphasis to that, the positive things that they've done. Okay,
And
anyone in
also
the,
in
yeah, go ahead.
the,
Okay.
what is that? In one of the Swami talks about reinforce the positive idea that you are Brahman. Even if you
Yes.
are not, if you don't do anything, but keep saying that to you. Actually, he says, fake it until you make it.
Yeah, well, Swami Vivekananda talked about that when even from a young age. So, yeah, absolutely, you have to do that. Yeah, but don't do that at the sake for egoism, though. So you can do that, but
of course,
so,
yes.
and it's so fake it. I don't know, make it, but at least let it go deep into the unconscious. I would say that's fine. Yeah. Anyone in the back? Does anyone have any? You don't have to ask a question. Anyone have any comment or anything that they wanted to in the back there? I see. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Swamiji, for your
Namaste.
talk
Namaste.
today. I
Namaste.
appreciate it.
Sure.
I
Sure.
had a comment. I was thinking about the internet, our technology today, and connection. And
Yeah.
it's, to me, it's a little bit paradoxical. Like, because of this, we can connect with you today, even though you're not close to Atlanta at all.
Sure. Right.
And yet I had an experience last night. I went to dinner. I finally, in this busy life, made a commitment to go to dinner at a friend's house last night. And, we text, but it's like this excuse that we don't actually really have to see each other. But I feel so good having actually really connected in person. It was so much more satisfying and so much more heartfelt. And so I think a lot of times, one of the problems with our phones and texts and everything is that we use it as an excuse not to really, really connect with other people. You just send a quick text, oh yeah, but there's not that true connection like I had with my friend at dinner last night. So
Yeah, I think that's what I think that's what we are kind of talking about when we said the technology shapes the menu. So that idea of okay, let me go meet my friend, let me go have dinner with them, it doesn't arise in the mind. Rather, okay, let's do a virtual call. And it's not only just about connection. Connection is one thing, but it's also about going through in any relationship, there'll be good and bad. So when you also face the unpleasantries, our ego gets knocked around. That's also how we grow and we learn. They say that now, and I don't want to sound like looking at my generation was better than the current generation, but they say that now even people have less emotional resiliency. If the ego, especially those on social media, if you say something negative, they call it hating. Don't hate. So the idea of taking anything as constructive feedback has gone down a lot. So unless the relationships are not always pleasant, they have both sides. As Shailesh, those of you who've been married a long time, so you go through a cycle. So it's like that. So I think that's why people they get insulated, so they don't get they don't cultivate also that what do you call it? Thick skin to be able to withstand or something some of the unpleasantries.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you. Thank you for that.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else back there? Anyone wants to you don't have to ask a question. Any comment that struck you or not anything you want to say? Your own personal experience with the internet or anything? Okay. Okay. So with that, then we're going to close today. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Swamiji, for
Okay.
coming over for Zoom and
Sure. Thank you.
I
Thank
know
you.
you are so busy, but
And
taking time out for us. And
no, I've enjoyed it. And this Wednesday, so we'll have your Wednesday, we'll have your Yoga Sutra class. So
yes,
we will resume that this Wednesday. What time
yeah,
was that? 8
yeah, it was
p.m.,
8
right?
o'clock Atlanta
Okay.
time. So I think it will be 5:30 for you.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, 5:30 Kolkata time.
That'll be fine. Sure.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Okay. No, I'm in the Himalayas now. I'm in Mayavati right now. So I'm not in Kolkata right now.
Oh, you
I'm
are in
Mayavati.
Mayavati. Nice.
So
Send us some pictures, Maharaj,
yes.
please.
I
Some videos.
definitely will. In
Yeah.
fact, in fact, I wrote an article that's going to come out in Harvard Divinity Bulletin. They asked, I think it's the Himalayans as spiritual chaplains. So that'll be coming out soon in the
Oh,
Harvard
wonderful.
Divinity Bulletin. So,
Very nice.
yeah, that'll be good. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, who's
Thank
that?
you, Maharaj.
Again.
Thank
Okay.
you.
See
Bye-bye.
soon with you. Okay. Jai Ma.
Yeah.
Okay. Jai Ma. Jai Ma. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah.